Hi, guys. Welcome back to episode 11. It's good to have you listening to us, and it's a major milestone for us. We recorded our first episode last year in a few weeks later than we're recording this episode. And thank you for being on the journey with us. And we'd promised you that we'd have a partner on and, we'd have a guest on. But unfortunately, that hasn't lined up. And we will have them on very very soon, but we felt like we needed to record this because a lot changes very quickly, and the longer it goes, the less we also remember to talk about. So we want to get everything to you while it's fresh, while it's all in the back of our head, and we can narrate it very very efficiently.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome everyone. Super excited to be here again. Uh, wow, amazing how a year has unfolded. Again, I feel like I've certainly it feels like 10 years to me, and I'm sure it feels like that to you, Abhya. Not least because you've actually gotten a degree while you were doing this. So kudos to Avya, who's just I think done his final presentation. And it's just a reminder that it's possible to stay abreast with this technology while doing other things. And I think I think all of us have to be that way. It's sort of like having one foot in the real world and another in this crazy fast moving world. And yeah, super excited to dive into everything that's happened. I think we've tried to stay true to our monthly cadence. I think our last episode dropped about a month and 3 4 days ago, so I think we're staying true to it. So yeah, let's
Yeah, and I
dive.
think this month we might have something much quicker in the follow-up episode, for our 1 year special. And I'm very excited to drop that and get everybody, you know, looking at the whole year, back at the whole year with us, and what we achieved this year, how far we've come, what we've learned, and just taking a step back and going through what we were actually doing a year ago, which is very different when we decided to start this. And what was really really with us at that time was understanding data and what AI is doing and how these models behave. And I feel like we made a decade of progress in a year in terms of how far we've come with what technology can do now, how the models behave, what code we're writing, and what coding practices are there right now. Because I feel like if you weren't moving with this target that is AI, it would be a very you would find it very very difficult to get up to speed now. Because I think it's reached that threshold where if you haven't been working with it, you haven't been actively using it, there's so much to just understand and take in, and why is this model different from the other, what harness is the best, why does this do this, what are skills, what are most of these different aspects of how models are used. And I think one thing which has really changed from early this year and last year is our relationship with Claude. And from Opus 4.5, which was probably my favorite, it still is one of my favorite models ever to come out. And that's because somebody published something recently and showed that it has the shortest, most concise answer length or output. And Opus 5 and Fable have answer lengths which are 10x that, or outputs which are 10x that. And now they've just made it confusing, and the models don't listen to you. And I think one major th- takeaway from this is I've cancelled my even pro level subscription from Claude until I have it till the first week of September, but it's been cancelled. I will not pay them going forward unless I see some real change. And one thing is that Sid and I have felt is that we haven't needed a Claude model in our workflow for a long time now. Like since last month, we've used Fable once and Opus 5, and I let Sid take over on his relationship with Fable.
Yeah, no, it's a bit like breaking up. It really does feel a bit like breaking up with after a whirlwind romance, shotgun marriage, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm running out of analogies and metaphors, but I think the idea is that we really enjoyed using Anthropic. It blew our minds. I think November is when it came out. 4.5 we started. I mean, we're a few months late to the party, but I think we jumped in with both our feet. We've really, I mean, unbelievable sort of progress. We've gone from obviously Copilot level usage to sort of cursor at one was essentially helping us write entire modules, but just the whole way in which software is now created. Um, Certainly over the last, and I don't want to get too retrospective because I know we're going to do a 1 year retrospective in about a month. But I think that it's been an amazing journey, and Claude was great, but they blew it, right? They blew it. They've been sort of blowing it really since sort of the botched Fable rollout. But they've been doing sort of own goals by rolling out either models that are, too smart by half. I mean, Fable and Opus are great if you want to, hack cyber infrastructure, but it's like using a Ferrari for a milk run. You don't need so much
We had that
intelligence.
analogy using a bulldozer to take out a nail, right? Because the
You
whole
just,
thing
you
was
just,
we
yeah,
and
you
we
just
did
don't need
Sid
it.
has
Yeah, go ahead.
Sid has this beautiful skill which we call TMT deploy, which is available, but
Yeah.
it's it's this skill which we test models with to see their competence, and I think it's a very very well crafted skill because it shows you two things. It shows you if a model can follow instructions, and if it shows you if the model has enough intelligence. But it also does
Yes.
one thing very well, as it has a cap on what intelligence of a model you want to use. And if the model is too smart and or doesn't follow instructions well, it will fail. But and what we've seen is that we find this Goldilocks zone, which is of models, which right now I think is none of the Anthropic models. And we'll come on to later, slightly later, what we think is the best and what
Yeah,
we've
it's we'll
enjoyed.
get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that. But I want to stay on the Claude breakup here because it's again, it's really I want to, hat tip to Claude. It really has been the biggest accelerator as far as our AI journey is concerned. So let's give credit where it's due. I mean, they built something durable, and they were the first sort of coding harness with the model completely tightly integrated. They showed the world all that was possible. So I mean, in my head, they'll always be the first mover. They're the Netscape, and I mean that in the most sincere and best way possible. They are to the let's call it the agentic development or productivity world what Netscape was to the World Wide Web, right? There were browsers before Netscape, but Netscape truly brought it together. Now, whether Anthropic becomes the Netscape of the AI world, or if it becomes the Google, remains to be seen. I'm not passing judgment or comment. I don't have a comment or an opinion about that right now. But I'm certainly not as as much enthralled with them. And my sort of my high level assessment, and we can end the segment here, is that everyone else is now caught up with it. So you can do, if you care as most people do about cost, and as Avya pointed out, getting just your specific job done, you don't need any model
I
from
mean,
Claude.
I
It's
and
simply
one thing I don't like to see it. Instead, you're saying it right. We don't like seeing Anthropic go backwards like this. This regression doesn't make any sense to me when you have the capability in the model, and they've done something today where they've increased this 50% extra usage till the 31st of August, and they're saying there's high demand for our model. They are actually losing usage very fast. And the reason is because, first of all, the models get very heavily lobotomized in the way they don't behave the same every day. I mean, I've used Grok, I've used Soul over the last month, and I've tried to use the Anthropic models, and Soul, I think, is by far the best model out there right now in terms of every use case I've felt. With the different reasoning models and reasoning modes and everything, I think Soul is my personal favorite model right now. Sid's, I think, is still Grok 4.5. I don't think anything comes close to that. But
yeah,
saying
yeah,
that,
yeah,
saying
yeah.
that that there's nothing from Anthropic which is even pulling me in, and the way the companies handled most of these things and their understanding of this open source, thing that came out, which Anthropic refused to sign. And the danger from open source, where it's not, and the fear mongering, and it's just pushed people away.
Yeah,
Even
they
even
were the good guys when they took on the Department of Defense. I think everybody sort of applauded that, and I think all that capital has now been, you know, lost because of the way that they behaved in the wake of you know, the DeepSeek models coming out and the Quins and the Kimmys. I mean, they've just literally. I don't think anyone agrees with their viewpoint. It's honestly, it's almost like a laughable argument that they're making at this point.
and
So,
I and it
yeah,
and it's very hurtful, I think, because, to be very honest, the amount of people that have probably believed in the company, and the amount of people that the goodwill they won is
yeah,
all dissipated. I don't think
yes,
there's one person right now where how I feel, where they are happy with how Anthropic has handled any of this, or happy with Anthropic's whole way of operating. It's been very, very ugly, to say the least. And what has happened now is you're looking at probably some of the largest customers of Anthropic moving to other models. Like you can see the premier model now, Grok. I think Grok 4.5, and now Grok 4.6 has come out, but Grok 4.5 is the closest thing to 4. Opus 4.5 I have received. And Sid will also say that the same thing, because it is just that perfect level of model where it does what you want it to do. It
yes.
doesn't do stupid things. It doesn't go on its own. It doesn't do fable level, uh, you
Well, it
know,
doesn't get stuck in
overruns.
rabbit holes, and it doesn't spin up sub agents. It doesn't have long internal conversations with itself. These are things that I think, as we become more and more advanced and better practitioners, we start to pay attention to these things, right? Like it's almost like saying, I asked you to do a milk run. Why did it take you 2 hours to do it? Well, it was
Why did you
because I
bring
was.
back the cow?
Why? Why did you bring back a cow? Or why did you
Yeah,
literally
like,
drive 200 miles to the local farm when you could have just gone to the local, you know, to the nearest, grocery store,
and it'll
um,
get you the wrong milk.
and get me the wrong milk? So I think again, so just again, we just to close out the, we'll switch to Grok in a second, but I really think that I hope Claude makes it back. I wish them the best. But for the time being, as Avya said, he's canceled his thing outright. I've gone from $100 to $20, and the reason I'm likely going to be canceling next month, but I still have about $50 or $60 worth of free API credits, which I'm going to use up because I'm a cheapskate. So I'm going to finish using that, and then I'm
Mine
going to
all gone.
then I'm
Mine all
yeah
gone.
yeah. I mean he obviously Avyas are all gone. The credits don't stay long when Avyas on the prowl. But for me, I'm going to be using it for I guess the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then I think by the middle of September I will be. It'll take a miracle for me to not cancel my Claude subscription. So that's a pretty bold assertion in my view. I don't think I could either Avya or I could have thought about doing this even 2 months ago. Um, so
And I'm the like thing is, Sid is a little bit more tentative in canceling these things, but the thing is, now I have got to that point where there is no goodwill left with most of these companies. They will they Their main thing is for you to come and spend money with them. And
yes,
they don't value you more than any other subscriber which is there. They actually value you less than most customers would be valued in companies, right? And
yeah,
that's what you have to realize. And you have to realize that when it's not working for you, cancel. Because Claude looks at the subscribers of the plans as money, not money makers. They look at them as cost. They look at them as a cost. They want the API people, they want the enterprise customers. So you are actually getting the short end of the stick most of the time. So I don't support it, to be very honest, the way the models are degraded. The current lineup of models from Sonnet 5, I don't think they've had one good launch. Fable was very good at the start. Right now, it is unusable. Sid would not use it. I would not use it.
yeah. So I again, let's segue now into our new. I mean, we've obviously mentioned Grok now in at
A
least two
shiny new
episodes.
toy.
Our shiny new object, and we continue to be dazzled and happy with our usage. It's become sort of my work, my go to, right? I mean, I look back. even 2 months ago, and I was squarely in the T3 harness zone. I had multiple providers inside my T3. Claude was my most used and most oftenly invoked provider. And what's really changed for me over the last month and a half has been I've stopped using T3, and it's for a really sort of silly and mundane reason, but it's an important one to me. And that is that T3's chat interface cannot render Markdown. It can't do Mermaid. So it's not so again, I've got nothing against Theo. I think he's an amazing guy.
I
This
think
was
the
hard.
harness is great, but it just got a limitation, which
It's not working for me. So I'm still kind of on the prowl for a replacement for a sort of one harness fits all. I suspect we'll talk about a little bit what's coming next after harnesses. We'll cover that briefly in a bit. But I think for the time being, my workflow involves having at least a cursor tab in the not in the IDE but in the chat mode, and a GPT or slash Codex tab. And I'm really it's working out well for me. I mean, I think again, it's like having a battery backup and a grid provider, and you switch between the two. Or it's maybe like cooking with charcoal versus gas. I do both, right? Good cooks do both. So I think that's where I'm at. Coming back to Grok, I think there was a lot of excitement when Grok 4.6 launched. Dropped what, 4 days ago, 5 days ago? How many days
I
ago
think
it
it's
was?
been a week,
Less than a
slightly
week
longer.
ago. It was a week ago.
I think
And
it's been a
we
last
immediately
Wednesday. Last Wednesday,
yeah,
yes.
we immediately switched on my cursor ID. I started using it, and weirdly enough, I was getting the same. I was not like buying into the hype. It was nice, but it also had some of the same psychosis or neurosis that Fable and Opus 5 had, which is that it starts to do things that I didn't actually ask for. Like I literally said, do A, B, and C, and it said, okay, you asked me to do A, B, and C, right? So I'm going to have a huge conversation amongst myself about what the right thing is. I'm going to use a bunch of sort of tokens internally. I'll take about twice as much time. Then I'm actually going to do A, B, C, D, E, and F because I think that's what you also want me to do. I don't. I'm sorry, Grox 4.6. I don't need you to be so smart for me. I've got plenty smarts for myself. So I think for me right now, I'm back to 4.5. And Avya is a believer in numerology, so he says 4.5 is a great number. The 4.5
I
pairing
think
actually
I
works.
think I mean 4.5 is good. 5.5 was good. I think the point fives are good.
Yes.
I think the
Point
point
fives are
fives are
always good. I mean, it could just be
5.1
that
was
they
also
sort of peak. It's where they're
5.
basically taking the model capabilities and gotten it to the point where it's perfect. And then everything beyond that is just them trying to do too much to,
I
maybe
think
either.
the issue is actually reinforcement learning.
Yeah,
Reinforcement
it could be.
learning is the issue. I think that pre-training a model is where they behave the best. Like the base for Opus 4.5 was actually a new model. They pre-trained a different model. Opus 4.5 was the first model of that iteration that had been pre-trained. Then they post-trained it to 4.6, 4.7, 4.8. Then 5 was a new pre-training from basically from Fable, which is and Mythos distillation, heavy distillation, because you can tell the way it acts. And
Mhm.
that's the reason why it's not behaving that well. And to be very honest, Grok 4.5 was the first pre-trained model in this set. Soul was a pre-trained model, was a new pre-trained. 5.5 5.5 was a new pre-trained. So I'm saying these pre-trained models actually behave better because they're actually intended to do what you set them out to do. What reinforcement learning, and I had did my final year project was in reinforcement learning. What it does is it tweaks certain attributes, right? Results might look better on a benchmark on certain
Yeah,
things, but behavior is actually changed because it's not behaving truly as you intended, which is where I see there's a problem, right? And following instructions, there's a
yeah.
little bit of reward hacking that goes on. And every time you're reinforcement learning, it's reward hacking in a certain way because you're
I
trying
mean,
to get it to perform.
I just had this, and that's so true, and it's a great segue for us to go off into a little bit of a mini rant. But I think we've said this multiple times, but like truly, it feels to us like a lot of these. benchmarking scores and the evals and the SWE benches of the world are standardized tests, okay? And I think what's happening in the world of benchmark testing is the same thing that happens when you have standardized evaluations of students at the seventh grade or the eighth grade or the 12th grade. Um, they're good at evaluating basic capabilities, but they're not good at evaluating anything else, right? Whether that student is a good fit for that particular university or that particular job requires much more deeper domain level interactivity, interaction, and evaluation, which is why I think that we take every SWE result that we hear or every benchmarking result we get, especially ones that are just tiny little numbers from 1 to 100, with a huge grain of salt. Uh, we literally, I think the best agent or the best LLM is the one that works for you, and that the one that's right for you is not the one that's right. That's basically gonna get all the benchmarks right. In fact, it might
and
actually do more harm than good. So please remember that.
and
So
I,
yeah,
and I
I
have
mean
a
that's it.
beautiful and I have a beautiful segue into another model which has recently come out and taken the internet by storm. That is Quen 3.8 27B, which they claim to be as good as Opus 4.5 running on local hardware. Now, every benchmark says it's better than DeepSeek, it's better than all of these models, and I think it's a load of just crap. And I'll tell you why. Because I believe if GLM 5.2, being a 700 billion parameter model, cannot perform better than Opus 4.5 at certain tasks, how can a 27 billion parameter model do it? I feel like it's heavily benchmarked. And I'd seen a couple of comparisons, and there was one person who was the right, I forget his name, but I'll come back and add it in the comments. There was one person who ran a test, and he said Quen took an hour and a half and it didn't work. Opus 4.5 took 30 seconds and it worked. And he's saying that the basic thing is you have to understand parameters is actually a big part of why models are the way they are. Parameters is like trying to run a 500 Google Chrome tabs on an 8 GB RAM laptop. The laptop may perform very well on one or two tabs, but there is a diminishing returns.
Yeah. Well, also, I think some of the funny comments after the consumer hardware line, because as you said, when Quen 37, the 27 billion parameter full quantization model came out, it turns out that you need a piece of hardware that has almost a terabyte of RAM, and that hardware itself costs around $150,000. So yeah, it may be consumer hardware, but which consumer are we talking about? Elon Musk. So consumer hardware is such a poorly and badly misused term these days that again I discount it. In fact, what's funny is that we actually have some clients who've come to us and said, shouldn't we be running everything locally? And we are at least today saying to them, no, you're actually
And
better
how our
off.
tune is changed. And how our tune is
Yeah,
changed
you're
from
way better. Literally from a year ago, right? Remember how last year we were talking about how Apple
all
Silicon is
local AI.
amazing
Yeah.
and amazing, and now it's now no. I think for the most part you're better off using an inference provider because uh, we know now that all the money that's being invested is in data centers, and so the cost of inference is going to continue to fall. It's going to take out a lot of big companies and some small companies along the way. They'll all declare bankruptcies, but in much the same way as the last telecom build out resulted in essentially a one-way street and a direction for long distance calling, the same thing's going to happen to inference. So uh, you don't need to invest in local hardware. I don't think you'll ever need to do that. I mean, maybe you'll have some specialized use cases where there's low power requirements, and then you'll start to get into edge AI. But that's for the most part, if you're just building agents, uh, you'll be able to find inference providers that give you that meet any budget. Really, that's my point.
And to come back on the point about parameters, okay, we use DeepSeek V4 Flash, the new version, which had been heavily post-trained. It's a very small model. It's only about 270 billion parameters, to about between 220 and 270. That model has outperformed GLM Quen, and all of the other open source models. Kimi K3 we haven't had much time to use because I feel like it's too expensive and too big for what we actually need. When there's Grok 4.5 which exists and this model, we will dive into it a little bit more so we can give you an open review on exactly what we think of it. I think the design skills are there, but I don't think it's too expensive for the model it is, especially when Grok 4.5 exists at a much lower price.
Yes.
And what
No,
I
I
think
think
with
Grok
Deep
2.5. Yeah, go ahead.
no, please. Grok 4.5 is the workhorse, and the price it's given at it's $6 output. Kimi is $15 output, and the cache cost has been cut on Grok 4.5, and I think it's just a much better model. Where this takes me is DeepSeek being a much smaller model. Grok is 1.5 trillion parameters. DeepSeek is 200 billion parameters. I think DeepSeek can do a lot of work efficiently because we gave it the TMT deploy, and Sid was actually very impressed with the way it handled the skill. It followed instructions. Some things were outside its comprehension, but I think that if you had an orchestrator model looking at DeepSeek, you could actually get some real good use out of it. And I've used it, and I truly feel like that model is amazing.
Yeah, no, I think this is all. I mean, this is why I am really. I think I hope. I'm actually hoping and expecting like an explosion. I would say there should be at least 5 or 10 more providers because when there's competition, ultimately the customer wins, the consumer wins. So don't buy the hype. Don't get vendor locked in. Anthropic wants nothing more than for you to never leave their walled garden. They've seen Apple do it for decades and essentially build one of the most valuable companies in the world by creating this beautiful walled garden. It's a beautiful garden. I'm not denying that, but it's a walled
You
garden.
can't get
Make
out.
no mistake.
It's like Hotel California. You try to leave the Apple
It's a hotel.
ecosystem, it's impossible.
Yeah, which is why
And
I'll
I'll
never be an Apple. I mean, I have a Mac, but I'll never have an iPhone. I've been an
because it's
Android guy.
impossible to go back to Android. It because I've had people talk about this as well. It's like that. It's like when people get addicted to Claude, they don't want to leave Claude. But we didn't want to leave Claude. We knew
It's
Codex
impossible
was
to
better,
break
but
the addiction.
we didn't want to leave Claude, and we left. And you know,
Yeah.
vendor lock-in is becoming a major problem now. And we talk very highly of Grok 4.5 and Cursor, but there's something called Grokbot, and what they're trying to get you to do with this new shiny feature, which Sid has had the opportunity to test out, and we actually like the idea of it very much, but we view it in a slightly different way. But it is actually the carrot that is trying to pull you in to the vendor
Yeah.
lock-in of Cursor and Grok.
Yeah, no,
And
cursors doing the smart thing. I mean, obviously they're smart people. They're probably getting lots of incentives to stay on. They've all made tons of money, but as we all know, there is no limit to human greed. So I'm sure they're being incented to, add the next shiny object within Cursor. So Cursor's Grokbot is really, like I would say, an open claw type, computer type perplexity, not a perplexity, but certainly a co-work on steroids. It's got a very nice interface. It's super easy to onboard. It has all the connectors that people would know and love, right? Like it connects obviously seamlessly to Slack. It connects to your Google Drive. It connects to your email. It's all about removing friction, which is kind of what Avyay and I have been working on as well. But like the evolution from harness is now loop, and loop engineering is really all about saying I don't even need to be driving this as I'm taking myself out of the loop so that uh, I'm no longer the choke point or the bottleneck. And everybody's trying to get people to do this. I think there are certainly some things that I want to automate about my life, and I thought I'd use Grokbot to do that, but I think within a day or two of using it, I realized that I'm getting locked in. There's a vendor lock-in happening. Um,
yeah, and we felt this because we'd actually got some meeting notes and we couldn't find them anywhere because they were sitting in Grokbot. And it was like such a silo, and they're moving
yes,
closer to this vendor lock-in with
I
something else as
exactly.
well.
I
And
I
they
uninstalled the Grokbot, and all my session history disappeared, which is I didn't like that at all. I mean, maybe I could have exported it if I wanted to, but I think everyone's workflow is unique, and you should own as much of your workflow as possible, because that's what makes you productive. And what Grokpod and all these other companies are trying, what these flows are trying to do is to flatten everything and say, look, it's just do it this way. This is the only way you'll be productive, which is again a bunch of crap. um, Everybody's productive in their own way. Like, some people are productive in the way they craft emails. Other people are productive in how they sort of, in just literally taking the meeting, looking at meeting notes, and converting them into BRDs, or product requirements or GitHub tickets. So I think the best kind of tools are the ones that actually are the most customizable, and also the ones that actually let you discover your best kind of workflow. So Grokbot is not that yet. I mean, we may look at it again. I may change my mind, but for the time being, we're sort of building our own loop engineering harness. So um,
I think
yeah, I mean
another
that's Grokbot
another
experience.
thing that the another thing that Cursor is doing very well is building this amazing ecosystem. I think the Cursor ecosystem is very good. I think all of the products they've shipped are very useful. We say this that Grokbot is good as a product. It's much better than any of the open source alternatives out there, like Hermes Agent or even even OpenClaw. But what I'd
Yeah.
put forward to you is that Cursor is actually really trying to pull you into this ecosystem, and they've launched something called Origin, which is their version of GitHub, where they want to lock you in to GitHub. You know,
Yeah, which is again just another episode of what happens when you jump on the treadmill. I've run a company where I ran my own company for a while, and then I got funding, and I felt like I'd been put on a treadmill where I needed to basically come up with some new shiny object every month, if not every week. And it feels to me like that Cursor Origin is a uh, it's just literally a
SpaceX
repackaged
actually,
GitHub.
yeah,
They've
it's a
just literally
SpaceX.
said GitHub, but better. I mean, how? It's exactly the same. The first thing you're making us do is import our repos from GitHub into Origin. And what are the features? Exactly the same. GitHub's just come up with something called stacked PRs, which they're going to basically roll out, and they're talking about how it's coming out of, alpha, and now it's going to be available to everybody. So come on. I mean, if you're going to be revolutionary, be fearless. They're apparently what Origin has is a better way of organizing the files, their file system improvements. So it's everything's under the covers. Most people don't give a shit about that. Like, honestly, pardon my French, nobody cares about how your infrastructure is storing the binary data. um, and that's not a compelling enough reason to switch to Origin. So come up with a compelling reason. You're calling it code hosting for agents, or I think whatever it is they call repo, version control for agents. I haven't seen a single wow feature come out yet. So this feels to me like one of those things where they were pushed to release this code.
And
It's not ready. Maybe it'll get better over the next few weeks.
it's what I feel really it is the axe getting heavier than the handle. That's what I feel like is happening. And the when the axe starts getting heavier than the handle, you can't swing it anymore. You can't
Hmm.
lift it, and that's what's happened to Cursor, where their whole operational team, their management team, is probably over the moon right now because of the acquisition. They're celebrating a little bit, but it's also where there has been more weight added to the head to think that can we strike harder? What can we do to throw OpenAI and Anthropic off their feet? What can we do to challenge
Even
this
more.
business? What
Yeah.
can we do to challenge this business? And the thing is, they have one advantage which neither of these companies have, which is SpaceX. And SpaceX has compute and has money and has given them. It's a two-edged sword, right? You can cut yourself with it also because it's very sharp. They've got the freedom to do everything, but that means they have to deliver something better every time they have a meeting, or every week they
Yes.
need to stay on the hype. And because their name is in the hype right now, It's amazing.
Yeah, when you're riding that tiger, I think it's really hard to not give into it and want to basically release something hot and new every month. But they should take a page out of. I mean, again, I hate to say it, they should take a page out of Apple, and Apple's been sort of the last mover in so many different things, but it moved really well and maybe Cursor is not in that position because they're not
They were
Apple,
never like
but
that though.
incumbent.
If you go back to the iPhone, if you go to the iPhone 4 and the iPhone 3, they were the first mover with a lot of this technology. It's like when you have
No,
something good
but I think they're
and
also they were. I think it was probably because of Steve Jobs, but I think they were obsessed about quality. They would never release anything that they considered to be half baked. They would pull releases. I just feel like there's clearly battles being fought and lost by the Cursor team about whether something is ready for prime time or not. Like it's okay to release something that's in. I mean, to be fair, Cursor Origin is by definition an early alpha. They're calling it an early beta product right now. So maybe they want to harden it over the next 2 months. Maybe it'll actually look good in a month from now. Maybe we'll change our tune, right? Who knows? But for now, this was a joke. I mean, Cursor Origin was a joke. I'm sorry, it was a joke.
I think
Yeah, I mean,
I think Cursor has done great things. They got a great ecosystem. I would say harden what you have. Don't try to make too many things, and don't jump on every new bandwagon because you've got a great product. You've got a great model now with Grok 4.5 and Grok 4.6, and you have all the tools to make it big. But also learn from Anthropic. Learn from Anthropic.
learn from Anthropic. Learn the lessons that Anthropic clearly is not learning right now. So
And talking about Anthropic, they must be over the moon with the revenue results for the quarterly revenues because Anthropic and OpenAI both had them come out recently. And they've been, Anthropics has grown to 11.5 billion, which is doubled from the last quarter. And OpenAI's has only grown 18%. But why I think that looking at these numbers is wrong is because it doesn't paint the full picture. Everybody on Wall Street, everybody who's looking at these just as numbers as companies, don't understand what this means for Anthropic and what this means for OpenAI. I think for OpenAI, it's a very, very dark time because investor money is going to get much harder to come by because they've got promises, they've got all of this, but they are in the perfect place right now, which the revenue is not showing. They've got a great product in Codex. Their models are performing very well. The models are very efficient and they do the right thing for planning, for debugging, for even everyday use. I think one subscription you can get is Codex, and I still recommend Codex as the cheap $20 subscription. If you have
yeah,
Codex,
but
then you should get Cursor as well.
and I also feel that perhaps the reason why their revenues have not grown as much is because they've had to hold back and heavily subsidize their Codex usage because they were not the number one, right? So when you're the number one, you can try to do what Anthropic did, which is continue to charge extra premium pricing. Um, I think that uh, OpenAI is playing the long game. I hope they don't run out of money. I mean, I think the OpenAI's models are, as Avya
They're
points
not
out,
heavily
really good.
pushing enterprise. This is one thing. They're
Not
not
really
pushing as
pushing
heavy
enterprise as
enterprise.
much. Yeah, I think
They're
what
not.
I mean, it's a 6 to 12 month lead, right? Anthropic decided very early on, like almost a year and a half ago, that they only wanted to focus on enterprise. OpenAI thought they'd win the consumer battle. They wanted to be like the number one GPT client on the planet. I think they won that race, but to what end? Because their revenue sucks. You don't make any money from free users, you know. So I think that's the lesson they've learned, in my view.
I think the main thing to learn from this is OpenAI has put themselves in a product and complete place where right now they are the best out of the two big labs. The out of the Google and Apple of the world, which is OpenAI and Anthropic in the models. It's you have to understand that Anthropic's revenue is actually peaked, and they're increasing the 50% usage because they're not getting complete utilization because people are sick of their tactics. I think Anthropic it signals where the top of their revenue will be. And for OpenAI, I think it shows that even if there's not explosive growth, what they've taken in to harden the product and care about the customer more will keep them alive in the long run.
Yeah,
I think looking
I
at
agree.
just a quarter, looking at just a quarter is very small in the grand scheme of things, and revenue numbers are not going to tell you the whole story. Look at for example, SpaceX Cursor's revenue or Grok's revenue. Grok doesn't have much revenue, but their model is by far the best right now. If you compare quarter on quarter, you would think that Anthropic is by far the best product out there. When I think it is actually the least complete product out there, out of all of these companies.
Yeah,
For
I
work,
think there's probably
for
a quarter's worth. Yeah, there's probably a quarter's worth of lag here. I feel like Anthropic's peak today is reflective of where they what the perception was 3 months
March.
ago. You know,
In
March
March, that
March to June was really where everybody was in love with them. March to May, let's say, and then I think the honeymoon started to slowly fade around the mid June time frame. So, but I think because revenues is a little bit of a lagging indicator, you won't see the dip or the flattening of the curve happening until probably later
it's
this year.
perfect timing for their IPO. This is perfect timing for the IPO they're planning to do in September because they know revenues are going to fall, and
Is that
they
what's
know
happening
that
there? Happening in
they're
September?
trying to IPO in September. That's what I'm saying. So Anthropic is really struggling with, understanding this. And one thing I'm really looking forward to see is, you know, where does this take the whole AI space? Because this is very scary for OpenAI. It's very positive for Anthropic for what they want to do, but it's also very scary in the grand scheme of things of where the market for AI is going to be in the next, let's say, 3 months. We don't want to see what's this Anthropic IPO has to bring. You know, I think getting an Anthropic IPO while they're at the top of the market where the revenue's been maximized is not going, not the best thing for the AI industry. I think there should be
Yeah,
regulations in place which actually give people transparency and show us revenue numbers post this quarter, so people actually understand what's going on and give. There's experts who come out and tell us that this is the actual reality of the situation.
yeah. No, PE multiples are high. We know that all these numbers are historically high. I mean, all the fact that the US GDP is essentially at least 1% of US GDP is all AI sort of data center spend, capital expenditure, like almost $1 trillion of capital expenditure has been committed over the next 5 years, or even in a shorter time frame than that. So it's crazy how these bets are being placed, and nobody really knows what's happening. Whether these bets are actually going to be placed, going to pan out or not. But we can look to previous build outs like this, and we don't have to look any further back than the 90s to see that in the long run, it only benefited the customer. So if the one positive that you can take out of this, I mean, just hold on for dear life because the ride's going to be pretty wild over the next 12 months. But I think that the other
And
side is actually looking good in my view, because the other side is this is truly becoming electricity or long distance telephony. It's a combination of the two, which again
and
is a great segue into our last segment.
yeah, and I want to say that where AI is becoming electricity, I think skills are at the foundation of it. And I think that
Yes.
as you have a circuit board in your house to organize that electricity and see where it's going, is it going to the gas, is it if you have an induction stove, is it going to you know going anywhere in your house, is it running your let's say microwave or your fridge, you can control that. And I think skills are exactly how you tame this and get reproducible results, and understanding that is your supply okay, is your supply behaving how you want it to behave, and metered usage.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think just taking what Abhya said, and to me, I've been thinking deeply about how everyone's talk. I mean, people have been calling AI electricity in various different contexts for the last 3 years, right? Not AI generally, but essentially generative AI, Gen AI, or tokens, or the stuff that you can meter. and what it can sort of achieve and all the possibilities around it. So it is disruptive and transformative the way electricity was in the 1800s, 1890s to maybe the 1920s. Um, and I've certainly come to believe that. But to me, the analogy is more about it's going to become a commodity. It's going to be something you plug in. It's going to have a standard interface, the electricity socket, the light bulb socket. Okay, there'll be a master switch, and you'll get a monthly bill. And some places where there's a lot of deregulation and a lot of providers, perhaps like Texas, your bills can fluctuate widely because they've allowed essentially market forces to take over. Other places where it's heavily subsidized and there's heavily regulated, you have a predictable amount of usage, so your usage per kilowatt hour is the same. So that's to me how AI will become in my rosy view of the future. This is how I expect AI to become, right? It's like it doesn't matter who the provider is. It's AI, it's inference, it's artificial intelligence. It's a unit of intelligence. Where I think all the interesting work is going to happen, and which I want to really sort of be a part of, is the appliances that you now have to create that plug into this new AI, into this new electricity, right? The socket's going to get standardized. That will be the interface through which, and the socket to some extent is the harness right now. Today, if you think about it, in a very fuzzy, weird way, the harness is where the inference is coming and you're using it. To me, one way of looking at this analogy is that the skills that we write today, in a weird way, are kind of the appliances. Okay, and in
Yeah.
much the same way as appliances require at least your three thing when you look at an appliance, typically you'll have sort of the wattage, which is how much power you actually. It's not enough to basically say I need 220 volts or 120 volts. You also need some sort of wattage. So you can certainly um, have a problem where if you're trying to run a power drill and you don't have enough if you don't have enough power coming through your socket, it's just not going to work, right? There's a reason why you have um, uh, there's a second dimension to this, which is the amperage, which is like, some are 16 amps. You've got 16 amp, 32 amp, you've got milliamps. And again, to me, in my head, the analogy stands because it's saying some skills require a Grok 4.6 or a Grok 4.5 running at extra high energy, and others don't require anything beyond a sonnet. It's exactly the same. So I think skills should become like that, where each skill has a spec. But anyway, that's what.
I think if we leave you with something today, I want you to really go to our GitHub, and we've got the skills all there, and you can give them a shot and play around with the skills. And I think skill specs is something which is like when Sid says it out loud, it seems like it's the right way to go. And there are certain things which I would not ever argue with Sid on, which is certainly how, which is structure, because the way Sid has made his skills and the repeatability and they're very precise. They do exactly what you want them to do. And the one skill which we didn't like, which we've also been working on, and will be available for you soon, is a modified version of Grill Me, I think. And
Yeah, the
Sid knows
MacBook
how much I
Plus
love
Grill.
Grill Me. Sid knows how much I love Grill Me.
Yeah, Grill Me Less, I think, is what the one of the placeholder names we came up with, because we said, look, it's great to have a very exacting intern who asks you every question exhaustively, but then there's probably a way to turn that dial back on a little. So for the people that don't want to be grilled exhaustively, maybe slightly less exhaustively, we have a skill that does that, and it turns out that actually it's pretty good. I mean, so there are ways in which you can actually tweak even skills. You're taking cola and turning it into light or diet cola. So that's kind of where we are right now. I would say skill writing is an art. It's going to eventually become a trade, or become more predictable and more like an engineering discipline. It's not there yet, but I see things moving in that direction, where uh, you'll have AI becoming a utility, and everything on top of that is just an engineering problem. So you're creating widgets that run on top of the electricity. I think that's ultimately where we're going. That's the future that I feel I want to live in. I do not, absolutely do not want to live in a future where uh, the AI provider is forcing you to use their widgets. This is the same exact thing as Abhi and I grew up. I mean, Abhi grew up in India. I grew up in India. Uh, we've lived in various parts of the world. I used to find it laughable when mobiles came out in the US that you were not allowed. You had to basically buy the phone from your freaking mobile
Provider,
provider.
yeah, AT&T, or I remember this. This was so funny because I tried getting a iPhone from the US and you had to get it unlocked, and they
Yes.
wouldn't
So the
sell
whole
you an
notion of
unlocked iPhone.
That's right. So the unlocked iPhone is the perfect metaphor for what Claude is trying to do with, or Cursor is trying to do with Cursor bot or Grok bot. It's basically saying, "Oh, we've got these amazing appliances. Please use them." No, you're an LLM provider. Stick to your lane. Make the LLM
Provide the
great.
electricity.
Provide the electricity. Let the ecosystem take care of the rest. Eventually people are going to realize that, and they'll say we're better off just basically optimizing our AI, our water usage, our electricity usage, our GPU usage, and let let the market figure out what comes on top of that. Let the appliance manufacturers fight it out, right? And in doing that, a lot of standardization has to happen. Nothing's happened. There's no standardization. We've got skills.io, which is a standard, which thankfully both Codex and Grok, and I think most of the Chinese models now will follow. I mean, essentially all the coding harnesses, the open source ones like Hermes and Deep Agent, will follow. But Claude, in its own, Claude's trying to be again like cute, right? They're saying no, 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 no. This agent, we support a slightly different format, and we have
It's
this
like
other stuff.
everybody uses a plastic cup, and Claude has come out and said we need to make one out of ceramic, just
Yeah,
for like
why?
disposable ceramic, like because they want to charge you more money. And I think one thing I have on my wish list, I hope they just open source Opus 4.5, just like once they IPO, before they IPO something, like just I have one thing on my wish list this year. If they open source Opus 4.5, we can update the information on it and just make it, just give me back that model, because I know they're gonna get rid of it soon. And I think that's that
Yeah,
my
getting rid of stuff is just again wrong-headed and dumb. I mean, it's literally like saying we are a battery provider and we have stopped producing AAA batteries because now you can only have an A or D or a nickel cadmium battery that's this big. Let me continue to use my AAA battery. I loved it.
I
I
needed
don't
my
need to.
remote. My remote doesn't work anymore, and they'll sell you a remote. They'll sell you the remote as well, which is
They'll send you a
annoying.
remote that will run the AA battery. Of course, they'll do that.
But I think that's a good point to leave it on. Thank you for
Yeah.
listening. 11 episodes. I'd like to thank my co-host Sid for putting up with me for 11 episodes, and he sees me a lot more than you guys do.
It's been
and
fun. I wouldn't do it with anyone else. It's been a lot of fun. We'll
and
continue to record into the ether and see where things go. But yeah, I think
and I'm glad we've taken this step, looking back on the last 11 months of how we've come through and what we've been able to achieve. And I think this is just the start. I think we were finding our stride as AI researchers, as you would call us, the TMT researchers and AI engineers that we've become today. From not knowing how to code a year ago to building out you know complicated systems, and hopefully taking the TMT podcast and service catalog deep into the future.
likewise. Yeah, and thanks again for listening, everyone. We'll be back really soon.
Take care. Have a good evening or a good day, and bye.